Hi, and welcome to the Peak Endurance Podcast. My name is Isabel Ross, and I'm the coach at Peak Endurance Coaching. Episode 55 is an interview with Amy Bender, sleep researcher. Dr. Amy Bender is a senior research scientist at Calgary Counselling Centre and an adjunct assistant professor of kinesiology at the University of Calgary. She received her PhD and Master of Science degrees in experimental psychology from Washington State University, specialising in sleep EEG. She has developed the only validated sleep screening tool for athletes and has implemented sleep optimization strategies for numerous Canadian Olympic and professional teams. Her current interests focus on how sleep and exercise interventions can improve mental health outcomes. She was a former college basketball athlete, did an Ironman in 2009, and currently chases her 3 young kids around, which probably keeps her fit enough, I'm sure. Do you have injuries or niggles ruining your enjoyment of running and hindering your performance? Get on top of these so that you can get back to the simple joy that is running. I've been in recently to see Luke about a tendinopathy on my ankle. Never once has he said to me that I need to stop running. With the work he is doing on my ankle and the exercises he has given me, which I've been doing religiously, my ankle is improving and my training is coming along nicely. Come in and see the specialists at Health and High Performance, where they utilise the latest in technology and experience to help you achieve the results you want and are capable of. So head on over to www.healthhp.com.au/run. Thank you so much for supporting the podcast. I love getting reviews. Nigel says, learning so much from Isabel and the variety of guests she chats with. I find myself taking notes every time I listen. Really enjoying these podcasts a lot. KP Bass says, thank you for finding a variety of amazing educators to interview in the podcast, learning and being inspired, which is great. Thank you. Thank you both so much, and for the 5-star ratings you both gave me. To be honest, I'm learning so much from all my guests and being inspired by them too. If you go to the YouTube channel where I load the video recordings of all of these interviews, as you're watching right now, you will see me taking notes too. Enjoy the interview with Amy. Hi Amy, and welcome to the Peak Endurance Podcast.
Thanks for having me.
No worries. Now, can you tell my listeners a bit about yourself and how you became so interested in sleep and its effect on performance in athletes?
Yeah, so I started off working in a sleep lab, and I ended up getting that job. I visited my aunt's sleep lab. She was a technologist at the time, and hooked up all the wires to the participants and was showing me kind of what that looks like on the screen. And I was just hooked. It was so fascinating. All these physiological signals coming out on the screen, and that you could classify sleep based on all of these signals. So I ended up luckily landing a job at the Sleep and Performance Research Center at Washington State University, who was starting up a sleep lab at the time. And got world-class training from amazing scientists, was a sleep technologist in the beginning, and then ended up going to graduate school, got my master's and PhD in experimental psychology and focusing on sleep EEG. Then I did a postdoc at the University of Calgary working with Canadian Olympic team athletes and optimizing their sleep. And currently I am the senior research scientist at Calgary Counselling Centre. We're looking at sleep interventions for better mental health.
Yeah, no, I was recently speaking with an author who did a book on recovery, and she came out with the viewpoint that sleep is the best form of recovery. Why is sleep so important for athletes? What actually happens during sleep that makes it so important?
Well, I think for 3 main reasons regarding athletes specifically. I think, no, and obviously this benefits everyone as well.
Yes, of course.
But yeah, I would say having to do sleep optimizes our mind and our brain, related to being able to make quicker decisions, having faster reaction time, perceived level of exertion. So when we have good sleep, we don't feel like we're working quite as hard.
Yeah.
And then I would say number 2 would be related to different hormones being released. So we have appetite hormones are regulated with proper sleep, which leads to better food choices, better nutrition choices for athletes. And then also testosterone and growth hormone is also being released during sleep. So our tissues are being repaired, muscles are being repaired during sleep. So that's very important. And then third, I would say it helps athletes stay in the game. So number 1, it would be related to immunity. So with good sleep, so for example, if a person is getting more than 7 hours of sleep, they're exposed to a cold virus versus someone who's getting less than 5 hours of sleep and they're exposed to the cold virus. They're going to be twice as likely to catch that cold as someone who's getting proper sleep. And related to career longevity as well, staying in the game, there was a study done in Major League Baseball players where they basically asked, they gave them a questionnaire asking about their levels of sleepiness, and they found that those who were clinically sleepy were over twice as likely to not be in the league 2 years later.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah, so I think it has many, many different benefits for
Yeah.
athletes.
Yeah. And you sort of touched on immunity. How does sleep affect immunity? Why does it strengthen our immune system? I mean, obviously the repair of the tissues and that sort of thing, but is there anything else in play there?
Yeah, I mean, specifically, I'm not an immunologist
No,
by
of
any
course.
means,
Yeah.
but I know the research related to T cells, so our helper T cells, that with sleep deprivation, they lose some of their stickiness. So part of their job is to attach to those pathogens, release chemicals to kill the pathogens. But when you're sleep deprived, there's actually somewhat of a lack of stickiness in to be able to attach on to those pathogens. So yeah, things related to that. Just overall, with sleep deprivation, we see more inflammation occurring. So that has a lot to do with our immune system as well.
Yeah. Now, sorry, I'm just writing some notes here too. Many ultra runners, do races that involve sleep deprivation. So they'll be running throughout the night. Is it possible to prepare for sleep deprivation? Can you train for that?
So I would say there may be people out there who might want to restrict their sleep in order to train for that situation. Bottom line, that's a bad idea. You can't, it's really difficult to adapt to chronic sleep loss. So the best thing to do in that instance would be to bank sleep leading into that competition. So as much as maybe a month before, but even a week before is going to show amazing benefits. So trying to get to bed earlier, trying to maybe sleep in a little bit as you prepare for that competition, and then even supplementing with a nap during the day. I know people are busy, they're working, they may not have an opportunity to sleep in that much. So potentially supplementing with a nap, and that any extra sleep that you're going to get, you're going to perform better during that sleep deprivation. And that's what the research shows. There are researchers out there that don't believe you can bank sleep. But I think it's a bit like paying off the sleep debt versus banking it in advance. I think it's kind of the same thing.
Yeah.
But the research shows when we're looking at these studies, and there has been done studies in athletes specifically, that if they get more sleep leading into that sleep deprivation period, they're going to perform better.
Yeah, so that's a good case for that. And I reckon athletes probably could sleep in a bit, because if they're training less, that's more sleep time that they should take advantage of, I guess.
Yes, that's true. Mm-hmm.
Now, I myself have noticed this, and I've spoken with athletes who've noticed it. When they race overnight, the period sort of between 2 and 4 a.m. seems to be the most difficult for staying awake. Why is there something with our circadian rhythm that makes that time particularly hard?
Absolutely. So between 2 and 4 a.m., usually actually more, probably maybe an hour shifted, but it does depend on your
Yeah.
chronotype or your preference for being a morning type or a late type. That's when our melatonin is highest. So
Ah, okay.
melatonin, yes, related to our circadian rhythm. Melatonin is released when it gets dark. It's at our highest levels in the middle of the night and is associated with the lowest levels of alertness. So it makes sense that that would be the most difficult time for some of those ultra runners. There's also not really any light,
Yeah.
and light helps keep us alert. So that's probably the main reason why that would be a difficult time.
Yeah. Now, you just spoke then about morning people and night people. So that is a real thing. Like people say that, but it is a real thing.
Yes, there's a lot of age-related changes as well.
Mm.
So when we're a child, we gravitate more towards being a morning type. When we're an adolescent, we gravitate more towards being an evening type. And then when we get into our 50s or so, we kind of revert back to more of that early bird type. But there is variation depending on genetics. So if my mom, is more of a night owl, I'm more likely to be a night owl no matter what age. So there is genetic variation, and it uh, it is based on melatonin release too. So
Oh,
if
okay.
I'm more of a night owl, it's likely that my melatonin is being released later. And so the best thing for that person would be to go to bed later and wake up later if possible. But
Mm.
it becomes a problem with society when
Yeah.
you have to get up early for your job. So there are some strategies in that instance where potentially exogenous melatonin may be useful for night owls, as well as blocking light at night. So wearing blue blocking glasses, putting away the electronic devices, and then getting lots of light in the morning can help shift those night owls to a more realistic time and help um, get their melatonin released a little bit earlier.
Okay. Yeah. Now, you spoke about napping. Um, so some people are a bit nervous about napping because they think it might stop them sleeping so well at night. Is that an issue? And why is it good for athletes to nap?
Napping is huge. It's such a great performance enhancer, and many athletes aren't really taking advantage of it. So, we did a study in Canadian national team athletes, and we found only about 20% were napping 2 or more times per week. Many athletes were not napping at all. And it boosts your mood. It boosts your alertness. It's very, very helpful for productivity. Um, and you're right, though, we don't want it too close to bedtime. So the closer it is to bedtime, the more likely it's going to be harder to fall asleep. So
Yeah.
we want to keep it in the afternoon when we have that natural circadian dip in alertness, between 12 and 3 p.m. And then try and keep it short if you only have a little bit of an opportunity. So you could do a power nap less than 30 minutes, even 5-10 minutes is going to be beneficial. And that's so that you're not getting into the deeper stages of sleep, waking up feeling groggy, not knowing where you are, having that sleep inertia that takes a while to get rid of.
Yeah.
But I would say, we worked with a lot of athletes who they were maybe a swimmer, they had early morning training because of pool times, and they just, because they're an adolescent or a teenager, they aren't able to get to bed quite on time
Yeah.
because of that melatonin release and the likelihood for being more of a night owl. So in that instance, we would recommend more of a longer nap to try and make up for a lot of that lost nighttime sleep. So a nap more around 90 minutes to try and make up for the lost nighttime
Yeah.
sleep.
Yeah. Now, just on that napping topic, I assume you've heard of this, of a caffeine nap, where you have some caffeine and nap. Does that actually work?
Yeah, it's called a Nappuccino.
Oh, I didn't know that's what it was called. I like it.
Yes. Yeah. You know, caffeine is a big issue of mine. I think
Mm.
so many athletes take it not really, just assuming it's going to improve their performance, which I would say overall, yes, it does improve performance, but there is new research coming out that potentially in slow metabolizers, caffeine is not necessarily a good thing. So, in this particular study by Dr. Guest, they had a cycling time trial and they gave the caffeine about, I think it was 30 minutes to an hour before the time trial. And measured everyone's performance. And when they looked at the fast metabolizers versus the medium versus the slow metabolizers of caffeine, they found that the slow metabolizers actually impaired their
Oh,
performance with
wow.
caffeine versus placebo by something like 12%.
That's huge.
Um, yeah, so for the fast metabolizers, it was way beneficial for them. This could be, it may not be that slow metabolizers would always not benefit from caffeine, because it could be that later on is when, this caffeine would kick in and really boost their performance. It's not really clear.
Yeah.
So I would say, use it sparingly. Personally, now the Nappuccino, the kind of benefit of that is that you take the caffeine at a
Oh,
time
yeah.
where, you wake up from the nap and you feel refreshed.
Yeah.
Personally, just based on my experience and how much caffeine can stay in the system, I would use it sparingly. Like in a long distance ultra endurance race, absolutely do everything you can. If the caffeine's helping you, use it, because you just got to get through those
Yeah.
2 days or so of work. But if you're an athlete needing to perform, twice a week and once a week, I'd probably just opt for the general power nap.
Yeah, fair enough. Now, in regards to like the slow metabolizers or fast metabolizers, is there any way of knowing, or is it just like you find that caffeine doesn't help you?
It is pretty difficult to know. And I will say also that many potentially fast metabolizers think that caffeine does not impact their sleep whatsoever. But there was a recent study in teenagers where they gave them an energy drink at dinner time and looked at how that objectively changed their sleep. And they found that there was about a 20-minute decrease in deep sleep, which
Oh,
is
wow.
that very important stage.
Yeah.
And when they asked participants, did you think this caffeine affected you? They were like, no.
Yeah.
So they didn't even realize that this caffeine was impacting them in this negative way.
Yeah, because they were still sleeping and I guess they didn't know they were missing out on that important part of the sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. No, that's good to know. Oh, sorry.
But sorry,
Yeah.
I didn't quite finish
Yeah.
the answer. You can take a nutrigenomics test. So there are tests out there that you can spit into a tube. It takes your saliva, analyzes your genotype, your genes, and you
Yep.
can find out
Oh,
that way
okay.
whether or not you are
Yeah.
a fast or a slow metabolizer. Looking at the SIP1A2, sorry, I might have messed that up, but
Yeah, that's all right.
that specific gene, and
Yeah.
looking at the different genotypes related to.
Yep. Okay. That's fair enough. And so I guess people can get that done. Now, when we're talking about sleep and, making sure that we get the best sleep that we can, am I correct in believing that it's best not to have screens in rooms? Like a lot of people watch TV in bed because they feel it helps them to fall asleep. Once again, just like people who think caffeine doesn't affect them, is it true?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of split among the sleep scientists,
Oh,
whether a
okay.
TV is really that bad. I mean, I would say number one, get it out of your room,
Mm.
but you don't want any, electronic devices in your room, even your phone. Like, get a old school alarm clock. For me, I keep my phone downstairs. If I have small children, so they wake me up early no matter what.
Yeah.
But every once in a while, I'll bring my phone in, put it on airplane mode if I need an alarm, for an important meeting or something. But so there is, I would say, TVs maybe not as bad as a phone or an iPad right in front of your face, where that blue light is sending a signal to your brain to wake up. It's reducing your melatonin. So a TV, maybe not so bad. It helps people relax. But anything close to your face, you want to avoid within an hour before bedtime. But then also be aware that it's not just about the blue light, it's about the content that you're watching too. So you may not want to be selecting some of those crazy TV shows where, a lot of bad
because
stuff happens.
a lot of people think that if they put the blue blocking glasses on, that they can keep looking at those screens right up until the last minute. But like you said, it could also be if you're watching something that really jazzes you up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's about that content too.
Yes. Now, there is also a lot of talk about, having good sleep hygiene. Can you break that down for us, what that actually means?
Yeah, so it's related to, good habits related to sleep. So either habits you do during the day, it's not just about habits right before bedtime, but exercise, which obviously your audience doesn't really need to worry about, but that's important for better sleep. Getting lots of light in the morning helps set our circadian rhythm to that time of day. So doing a run outside during daylight in the morning hours before noon is going to be key for sleep quality. A lot of the research looking at light exposure prior to noon shows that those people get better quality sleep, and the electronic devices don't necessarily impact them as much as someone who's indoors all day, staring in front of a screen, not getting much light outside, which can be 200 times brighter than our indoor lighting, depending on if you're in direct sunlight. So that's an important component, the light component, and then blocking the light at night, potentially with the blue blocking glasses about 2 hours before bedtime. Making sure you're putting those electronic devices away, which we talked about, but also having relaxation activities before bedtime. So taking a warm bath or shower has been shown to temporarily increase our body temperature, but then the body temperature plummets, making it easier for sleep. So that's a sleep hygiene technique. And then, just having some time to unwind prior to bed.
Yep. No, that sounds good. I did wonder how the warm bath worked because I thought your body needed to drop temperature. So that's interesting to know. So if just say we're doing all the right things, or we think we are, but we're still having trouble sleeping, what are some strategies we can employ to try to help us sleep?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important for people to know that sleep hygiene isn't a fix for insomnia by any means. It's more, they use sleep hygiene as the control group when they look to see the effectiveness of cognitive behavioral therapy, which is the gold standard for insomnia. So I would say that if someone's doing all the right things, we didn't talk about alcohol. That's another sleep hygiene technique, avoiding alcohol too close to bedtime. But if they're doing all the right things and they're still struggling with their sleep, it's probably time to seek help from a sleep professional. Now, I helped develop the athlete sleep screening questionnaire. So people can go to centerforsleep.com and there's an athlete sleep screening questionnaire that people can take. It's completely free. It gives you personalized recommendations based on your responses to the answers, and will let you know if you need to seek help from a sleep professional.
Okay. Yeah. And because sleep is so important, I do agree that people should follow up on that. Now, you spoke about alcohol before, not consuming alcohol, although some people seem to think that it helps. What role does nutrition play in how well we sleep? Like the foods that we eat and the drinks we drink during the day, how does that affect our sleep?
Yeah, this is a really exciting area. I think there needs to definitely be more research in this area. There are certain foods that promote melatonin. So, for example, kiwi fruits help promote melatonin. So there's been a few small studies showing that a kiwi fruit, maybe one or two prior to bedtime, is helping with that melatonin release, and helping people who suffer from insomnia. Also, tart cherry juice. So tart cherry juice has a lot of antioxidants, and it leads to better melatonin production. Now, recently there was a study looking at protein. So protein before bedtime helped people fall asleep quicker.
Okay.
Yeah, and it was interesting because this study, maybe we can link to it in the show notes.
Yep.
But this study found that those who fasted, these are high-level athletes, those who weren't eating after dinner, so after it was 6 p.m., were actually sleeping worse than those who were having a snack. Now, now we don't want a huge meal right before bedtime because we're trying to digest the food and rest at the same time. So that's not good. But having a small snack, having a little bit of protein, some carbs is going to help people fall asleep quicker and have a bit better sleep quality, especially if you're expending a lot of energy with your workouts. Not going too long. If you go too long without nutrients, your body may wake you up, unintentionally.
Yeah. Yeah. No. And I know sometimes when people are trying to lose a bit of weight, they will not eat before bed. But then if you can't sleep because you're so hungry, that's more of a performance hindrance as well. Yep. I'm sorry, I realised with some of these questions, a few slipped in there that shouldn't have been in there. Sometimes, certainly, many athletes, they're trying to drink lots of water during the day, but then they're finding they're getting up during the night to go to the toilet. What can we do to kind of stop that happening quite so much?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's completely normal to wake up once during the night. So once during the night, not a big deal. As long as you're getting back to sleep within 20 minutes.
Yeah.
I wouldn't fret too much about that. That's still considered good quality sleep. You might just move some of that hydration to earlier in the day if you can, if possible.
Yeah.
And then be conservative with the amount that you're drinking prior to bedtime. So one good technique would be to sip your water or use a straw versus gulping it all the way down.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's fair enough. Now, also, what is the effect? Like you talked about exercising in the morning, which is good for getting all that sunlight. Some people prefer to train of an evening. How does that affect their sleep?
Yeah, I think as long as it's not, the research shows that as long as it's not within an hour of bedtime,
Yeah.
and it's not too vigorous, then it's not a big deal to exercise in the evening. There have been some other studies looking at the circadian rhythm and how that changes with exercise. So typically, if you exercise in the morning, it's going to shift your circadian rhythm earlier, which is good if you have to get up for work and that kind of thing. But if you're exercise in the evening, it's going to shift your circadian rhythm later.
Yeah.
So depending on what your routine looks like, if I have to get up at 6 a.m., that evening run at 9 p.m. may impact my ability to fall asleep and have good quality sleep. I would say if every once in a while, not a big deal, but I wouldn't purposefully make my training in the evening if I had the option to train in the morning.
Yeah, fair enough. And certainly don't do your high intensity workouts then either, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And do you have any tips on how athletes can utilize sleep to improve their athletic performance?
I mean, just what we've talked about previously, we haven't talked about the quantity of sleep. So people want to aim to get a minimum of 7 hours. For athletes, we think they need more. So normal adults between 7 and 9 hours. Athletes, depending on your workload, your training load, likely need more sleep. So you probably want to aim to be in bed for at least 8 hours if possible. If you're able to fall asleep within 30 minutes and don't wake up too often.
Yeah.
In college athletes, with this sleep extension study in swimmers and basketball players, they told athletes to be in bed for 10 hours. And prior to this, their normal levels were right around 7 hours.
Yeah.
They ended up getting almost 2 more hours of sleep. And when they looked at their performance, their mood was better, their reaction time was better, their performance was better. So their free throw shooting, their 3-point shooting was better. They had faster sprint times. So, it's almost like the more sleep you can get, potentially the better performance you're going to have.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to all point towards getting as much as you can. It's basically a free performance aid, I guess.
Yes, it is. It's completely free. A
Yeah.
very potent performance enhancer.
Now, is there any difference? I was just thinking of this then. Is there any difference between like men and women, how they sleep or how sleep impacts them and that sort of thing?
Typically, women do get a little bit more sleep than men, maybe 20 minutes or so. So that's interesting. And then also, women suffer more from insomnia. So the inability to fall asleep quickly, maybe waking up during the middle of the night. And that could have to do with hormones being released. Menopause is a time where people really struggle with sleep. So it may be related to that. And then I would say men are more likely to have sleep apnea, so where they stop breathing during the middle of the night. So men who are 50 and up are at higher risk. If you're overweight, if you have a large neck, those are all risk factors for sleep apnea if you're snoring.
Yep. Okay, that's good to know. Now, is there anything that you would like to add that you think I might have missed that could be important for athletes, but also just people in general in regards to sleep?
I think there's some really great techniques to help people fall back to sleep or even fall asleep, which is important for an athlete, during competition. So the 4-7-8 breathing technique, that's where you breathe in for 4 seconds, you hold your breath for 7 counts, and then you breathe out for 8 seconds.
Yep.
So you repeat that 4 times, and that helps activate the parasympathetic nervous system, that relaxation system. I just saw recently a technique called the 5-finger. So you trace your fingers. So you breathe in as you're tracing your pinky up to the top. And
Yep.
so you're breathing in and then you breathe out as you trace your pinky down, and then you move on to the next and you just breathe in and breathe out. And it's supposed to activate the parasympathetic nervous system. And it uses a lot of your senses. So you're looking, you're feeling, you're breathing, you're really focused in on the moment.
Yeah.
That might be a good technique. And then the cognitive shuffle, I really like. That's where you think of a word such as bedtime. You imagine all the objects you can, starting with the first letter. So B, ball, baby, bus, banana, bag. And then when you can't think of any more objects, you move on to the next letter, E, eagle, egg, ear. And by the time you get to the end of the word, hopefully you'll be sound asleep. So that's a good technique. Progressive muscle relaxation, tensing different muscle parts, up and down, and really focusing on those areas is a good one. And I would say also for people who are maybe they've tried these techniques and they're still wide awake, the best thing to do would be to get up out of bed, go to a different room, do a relaxing activity in low light. So maybe reading a paper book in low light, and then only return back to bed when sleepy.
Yeah.
So you want to make sure that you're associating with the bed with being asleep and not being awake. So that's a really important tip for people too.
Yep. Yep. Now, is it a common thing like that you can go through stages of insomnia and then sleeping well? Like, is that a common occurrence for people?
I would say not, I mean, yeah, to a certain extent, because you are maybe sleep deprived, and when you're sleep deprived, then you might have a more deeper night's sleep the following night. So potentially, but I would say the majority of people with insomnia are really struggling many times during the week. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. No, that's
so
fair.
it's really important to get that checked out. There are online programs that you can do. Even if you just Google cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, you're going to find many different online programs that people can take advantage of. There are sleep behavioral specialists out there who you can go in and do sessions with them as well. So you might look into that too.
Yep. Yep. Do you think things like meditation and that sort of stuff helps at all?
I think so too. Yeah. I mean, there's a number of sleep meditation specifically. Like if that relaxes you, that could be potentially useful. And I believe there are some components of the cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia that includes meditation as well. So definitely, I think that's helpful in activating that relaxation system.
Yep. No, that's fair enough. All right. Well, I appreciate your time. I'll put the links in for, if you can send me for the protein at bedtime. You said the study for that one.
Oh, yes.
Yep. And also I'll get the link for the sleep questionnaire that people can access. How can people find out more about you or what you're working on and that sort of thing?
I'm on Instagram and Twitter, so I'm at Sleep for Sport. And then I'm also working on a website. It's a bit slow going, but my website is sleepwelltowin.com. It's not quite ready yet, but I'm hoping to get a jump start on that. And I'll have different topics that people are interested in. So I'll do different blog posts related to that. You'll be able to just keep track of what I'm doing through that website.
Excellent. That sounds great, because I'm sure a lot of the athletes listening will want to access some of that information. So thank you for that. All right. Well, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it.
No problem. Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Thanks.